Here's the lesson of the tower. You know, I'm sure you've all heard of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? And soon after the construction of this tower in Tuscany, Italy, and soon after it began in 1173, it began to sink on one side. And it caused the beginning of that tower to lean when they just had one or they're beginning the second story on that thing. Yet they kept building on that faulty foundation. And incredibly, they built this huge 8-story tall, 16,000-ton structure on a tiny 10-foot deep foundation, which is set on top of very unstable soil between two rivers. They knew better. The Italians were incredible builders, yet they kept building on a faulty foundation. You know, even though they were expert craftsmen, they continued adding floor after floor to this tilted foundation for almost 200 years. From 1173 to 1372, they just kept building. 100 years after the construction began, one contractor actually tried to compensate and to straighten it out by making the next 4 floors with longer walls on the leaning side, thinking that he could straighten it back up. And all he did is make the tower curve a little bit. But it added such a great amount of weight that it tilted even more. Even knowing this, they still kept building. In 1838, almost 500 years after they completed this 8-story tower, to increase tourism, a local official ordered a trench to be dug around the entire base of the Tower of Pisa, so that all the tourists could come and see how great of a base, how beautiful the foundation was laid, the stonework. And so they did this. They dug this around this already weakened and small foundation to show off its detail. The crew hit water. The trench filled up with water like a moat, and it tilted even more. See, now they're trying to patch the foundation. Henry Ford said most people spend more time and energy going around a problem than they do in trying to solve them. In 1934, 100 years after that last fiasco, a guy named Benito Mussolini tried his hand at fixing the tower. And he thought the Leaning Tower was an embarrassment to Italy. And he wanted to set it up perpendicular once and for all. And so he hired his best guys and engineers and everything to figure it out. And they drilled 361 holes in the base of this. And they pumped 90 tons of concrete into it. And all it did when it hardened, it added more weight as a counterweight, and it leaned even more. In World War II, the Germans used the Tower of Pisa as an observation deck. And the Americans thought about destroying it because they could see for a long way from this, but because of its historical value, they didn't. So, but in 1964, the government of Italy attached 800 tons of lead to the high side, which did little more than make it ugly. 800 tons of lead. And between 1990 and 2008, excavators removed 100 tons of soil from the high side to stabilize the foundation, but this time it worked. This time it worked. And the Leaning Tower has stopped its leisurely collapse for the first time in history, because it was constantly moving to the point it would have collapsed. And the engineers say that this last fix will last for 200 years. So the Tower of Pizza has been an 800-year construction project, but Italy will never again try to completely straighten the Leaning Tower of Pizza. They're just trying to keep it from collapsing. And I think that's how people's lives are. After a while, you just try to keep it from collapsing. Because it's hard to build a foundation. It's hard to repair a foundation that's already been there. See, even though they kept working for 8 centuries, they were never successful at correcting that foundation. And today they have no intention of straightening that tower. After all, it brings in 60 million visitors to the town of Pisa every year. And that's a lot of euros that come in. So to the world and to Italy, it's good enough. We'll accept it as it is. Is your life good enough? To what standard, to what blueprint have you built yourself? You know, we can each only believe as high as our foundation will allow us to build. That's it. So if you keep trying and it doesn't work, it doesn't stick, it's your foundation, folks. And your foundation is your self-talk. That little voice in your head that just keeps chattering at you. Kevin Bacon, an actor, said, "I don't read criticism of my stuff, only because when it's bad, it's rough. And when it's good, it's not good enough." But it shows a high opinion of oneself. You can't be an actor at his level without having a high opinion of your ability. You can't be a success in anything in life without a high opinion of your own personal ability. Self-talk. See, begin at the base of your believing. Fix your foundation by fixing your self-talk. Like Henry Ford said, the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't are both right. Which are you? End of quote. Imagine just building a car. Be one of the first ones ever to do it. Or engineering an assembly line. I mean, what he did, it's incredible what Henry Ford did. But it all starts here. He saw it, which we'll get to quite graphically in a few minutes. See, what do you think of yourself? That is your base. That's as big as your foundation is. And you can build no higher than your base believing will allow. See, improper self-talk over an extended period of time hinders us from straightening out our own believing. See, the moment we say to ourselves, "I'm satisfied, this is as good as it gets," that's the moment we stop believing. Now, I know this is simple, and we all understand this, but we just got to start doing it. But it's every thought, like that one verse, lead every thought captive. That's what this is talking about. It's every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Here's one. See if you can guess who quoted this. Trying to tear down the past prohibits you from building up your future. Lil Wayne, American rapper. I mean, that's a pretty heavy comment for Lil Wayne. Trying to tear down the past prohibits you from building up your future. Which way are you looking? You driving, looking in the rearview mirror? Or you look out the windshield? It's your choice. See, believing is a foundation to everything we've ever received or achieved. You know, self-talk is a foundation of our believing. All successful people understand this. Here's a quote. "Hell, there are no rules here. We're trying to accomplish something." Thomas Edison. I mean, what is it, 10,000 tries to do a light bulb? That's a lot of failures. That's a very low percentage rate, yet we've all enjoyed it our whole life. The incandescent bulb, which is going out of fashion. And go ahead and turn here to Luke. And we're going to read Luke 6, 47 through 49 from the Message. And this is just to explain this. This isn't going to be the main text. There's no rules here, folks. Who set the rules for you? Who told you who you were? And why did we believe it? These words, verse 47, I speak to you, are not mere additions to your life, homeowner improvements to your standard of living. They are foundation words, words to build a life on. If you work the words into your life, you're like a smart carpenter who dug deep and laid the foundation of his house on bedrock. When the river burst its banks and crashed against the house, nothing could shake it. It was built to last. But if you use my words in Bible studies and don't work them into your life, you're like a dumb carpenter who built a house but skipped the foundation. And when the swollen river came crashing in, it collapsed like a house of cards. It was a total loss. You know, I've seen houses washed away by a flash flood last year. You know, these houses had stood for decades. You had a little bit of raging water, boom, pushed them right off their foundations. See, build a strong foundation with quality materials, quality self-talk. This will literally be the hardest thing you'll ever have to do, because we are so used to being us. You have to become a different you. You really do. It's every thought. It's controlling it. Every time you feel poorly about yourself, you change it. Every single time. Every time you think you can't, I can. Every time you think, I'm not able, I am able. I can do. I mean, look at the word, how much in the Bible is set up so we can think highly of ourselves. It's all to set our self-talk, every bit of it. Jimmy Connors, a tennis champion, once said, I can't go win Wimbledon anymore. So if what I've done in the past is not good enough, let it go. Because I'm certainly not sitting around thinking about it. Champion. Don't hang on to the negatives or your critics. There'll always be critics. Don't sit around and ruminate over lack or failures. Let's build that inner vocabulary like a champion. What you train yourself to say internally is what you will see externally.